Let's talk about these security types. This is Wi-Fi security we're talking about, and we have four types here: Open, WEP, WPA, and WPA2. Now there is a WPA3. It's still relatively new, and we aren't seeing it very much in practice yet. Let's take a look at these. First of all, open just means that the sender and receiver are able to talk. There's no passwords, nothing you have to do in order to get there. You often see this in some guest circumstances. You go into a lobby and you just sign on, you're there. Now, just because it's open and there's no password required doesn't mean you won't have to put in a password. It is possible that you have something called a captive portal, that once you're on it, a server or a special software built into that access point may ask you to sign on, but it's not part of the Wi-Fi system. That's a separate thing. Now, there was some attempt to put some security on devices so that not just anybody could log into anybody's access point or router. That was called WEP, or Wired Equivalent Privacy. Wired equivalent, sometimes we call it worst ever privacy because it actually is fairly weak. It used an encryption type called RC4. I'm not going to go into what RC4 is, but it's one of the basic types of algorithms that we use for encryption. And it also used something called an initialization vector. The problem with it was that this initialization vector was sent across the wire in plain text. The key was actually encrypted, but the initialization vector was not. And after you capture a certain number of frames and see some repetitions going on in this initialization vector, you can untangle it mathematically and figure out what that key is. Well, when we discovered that problem and people started cracking this RC4 or this WEP encryption, we decided we'd better do something stronger. But the problem was, what we wanted to do was to move from RC4 into another one called AES, which is a very strong encryption type, but computers were not yet ready. For example, the Microsoft computers at the time were using Windows XP. Windows XP did not have AES encryption built into it. It did have RC4 built into it. So it wasn't until the big release of Service Pack 3 that we were able to use WPA2. So a stopgap measure was invented. Wi-Fi protected access, which used RC4 encryption, but changed this IV system to something called TKIP, or Temporal Key Integrity Protocol, which made it more difficult to capture these and to untangle them. Basically, at this point now, you needed a dictionary attack or something like that in order to be able to discover this key. Finally, Windows XP Service Pack 3 came out, and other computer systems started adding AES encryption, and now we were able to release Wi-Fi Protected Access 2, and that's what we've been using now for a number of years, and it uses this AES encryption, so these keys are very, very difficult to crack by capturing what's going on in the air between them.